So now we're going to look at world building from a different perspective, that of the Halo franchise. Now, a franchise is much more than just a game. It's a whole universe. It's storylines and characters that exist across different media, even merchandise. Managing all of this and still staying true to the original vision is a huge challenge. And fortunately, we have somebody who knows a lot about that. Bonnie Ross is a corporate vice president at Microsoft and also head of 343 Studios. And when I was at Microsoft, I had the pleasure of working with Bonnie on a lot of different franchises: Zoo Tycoon, Mass Effect, Gears of War, and of course, Halo. So this is someone who really knows what she's talking about, is a fantastically talented producer and leader. I'm really happy to have her here to share her experiences with us. Bonnie, come on out.
Hey.
Good luck.
Thank you. I don't know if I really know what I'm talking about, but you guys are stuck with me for 20 minutes. Well, I'm missing my first slide, but there, world building. So it's great to be here on the last day of DICE. And the theme for this year's DICE is world building. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about Halo and my love for sci-fi. So what gives a world staying power? What made us fall in love with Star Wars and then keep wanting more 40 years later? You could say the same with Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or Harry Potter. What's so special about these worlds or these stories that we keep wanting to come back for more? When the first Star Wars shipped, I think I was in a ship's released, I think I was in 3rd grade. And my parents came home that night after seeing the movie, and my dad exclaims, "We've got to see this movie. This transforms the way we think about space," like space with a capital S, because maybe I don't know, we used sci-fi back then. And in my mind, as a 3rd grader, and what we knew about what media had done, I was thinking I was going to an educational movie to learn more about maybe the planet's rotations, Earth's rotation, planets, stars. And so when we hit the Cooper, which I don't know if you guys, for those of you that were around at that time, it only released in a few theaters, in the big theaters. Like back there in the olden days, just like there weren't cell phones, there weren't multiplexes. So there were huge theaters in which we saw this. And so we stood in line with hundreds of people waiting to go through this, and then saw the movie with, I think, there were like 1,000 people in the theater. And we all left transformed. George Lucas created a world we didn't even know existed. But now that it existed, we wanted to escape into it. We wanted to understand the mythos. We wanted to save humanity. So as you think about games, and what makes staying power, like what makes worlds have staying power as a game? I think as a game, there's 2 worlds. There's the worlds we, the creators, create, and then I think there's the world that the users inhabit, interact with, and ultimately make their own, whether we design that or not. I'm going to talk about 2 things today, and that's kind of like the creator's story and then sort of my story or our story of stewardship of the universe. So in the creator's story, I think most people know who Bungie is and who 343 is. I and 343 did not create the original Halo. The very talented studio Bungie did. So this kind of gives me the luxury in this section to more talk about Halo as a fan, as that's how we all came in through Halo. My dad does think I'm the creator of Halo, and I have this funny story where a few years ago, my dad had a stroke. That's not the funny part of the story, he's fine. So I flew home and went to a couple doctor's appointments with him to take notes for him. And in one of the appointments, my dad exclaims, "Do you know who my daughter is? She is the creator of Halo." And I'm looking at the doctor, and I'm like, he doesn't play Halo, and I just kind of smile and nod. The doctor stands up and says, "Oh my gosh, you created the Halo?" And I was like, "Oh, no, actually, Bungie created Halo. I manage Halo." And then he looks at my dad and he goes, "Your daughter," and he starts created the Halo. Now I realize he's not talking about the Halo that can kill all sentient life. He's talking about the Halo that basically saves spinal cord injuries. And so now I stand up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not create that Halo. The Halo I was talking about was like 500 years in the future, and there's these aliens and I'm just here to take notes for my dad. So Anyway, I did not create any of the halos for the greater good of humanity, but I sure inherited an amazing world. So what gave Halo staying power? I mean, what makes Halo relevant 15 years later? When you look at entertainment, all forms of entertainment, I think people look at it for escapism. And I think with gaming, there's two forms. There's this, I want to escape the world that I'm currently in to go into an alternate world. But there's also an empowerment and control that you only get in interactive entertainment, which is mainly games right now. So when you think about why Halo had the staying power that it did, I think very similar to what happened with us and Star Wars, is Halo was a first. I think Halo kind of transformed the way we think, at least about the FPS, but I'd say back in the time, even for all gaming, it was such an expansive, epic world. It was such a different experience that we'd had. It was a first, an origin story, and it stuck with us. Halo is about wonder. That it's about the mythos of that universe. And the first time we all saw that Halo, it was life-changing. And when you look at that expansive world that we didn't know existed, or I would say Marty O'Donnell and the music that he put there gave it a theatrical grandeur that I don't think we'd experienced before. It's about heroism. It is about saving humanity. And Master Chief is the hero, but he's also you. If Master Chief is the body, Cortana is the heart, and I'd say brains, then you as the player are the soul. And I think that's a really impactful trinity. It's about creativity. I put some kind of goofy fan pictures up here, but it really is about that sandbox world that Halo had where you could do anything. For me, it was in Silent Cartographer and the Warthog, driving it into the water and no one's drowning, realizing that you could do anything you want and this world was my world. And then ultimately it's about humanity, and that humanity is really worth saving. And I put together, well, I didn't put together, my team put together some of my favorite moments in music in a piece that hopefully kind of reminds you about why you fell in love with Halo. If you could play that now.
Any player that picks up the ball instantly becomes Griff. Yeah, I'm famous. Oh my God!
Epic Halo night.
We're not gonna make it.
We'll make it.
Pull up! You did that on purpose, didn't you?
Cortana. It's not over. Not yet.
Not yet. Goodbye, John.
Wake up, Chief. I need you.
I need a weapon.
117, stand down.
I have a job to do.
Kill the demon.
The Forms have returned.
Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing?
Finishing this fight.
I always love that music. I think it's so emotional. So when the world you own isn't originally your own, I think that the role of stewardship is of paramount importance. In 2007, September 2007, we shipped Halo 3. This is a spoiler alert if you haven't played Halo 3. At the end of Halo 3, the Human Covenant War is over. There's peace. And Cortana and Chief are lost in space. And in the real world, after we shipped Halo 3, Microsoft made an announcement that Bungie and Microsoft Studios were having an amicable separation, sort of a conscious uncoupling, if you will. And as such, in 2007, I started 343. A lot of questions. Is Master Chief dead or alive? Is this the end of Halo, or is it just the first trilogy? And if you think, like, what would have happened if George Lucas hadn't told any more stories after the first trilogy? And I know all the trolls out there are like, he shouldn't have, the first three were the best. But you know what? You guys are all standing in line with me 40 years later, going to see the next story. He created a universe worthy of devotion, one in which you can tell hundreds of stories. An interesting thing about, I don't know if fictionally if you knew that, Halo CE through 3 in a fictitious world took place in just a few months in 2552. And so for me, this gave a lot of thought of what's going on in the rest of the universe? How big is the universe? How much of the universe should we reveal? And these are all the things that we kind of took in with like first steps for thinking about stewardship of the universe. And this is a journey. So I'll tell you a few stories that we've had along the way, what we've done that I think was good, and then some learnings. So in taking over the mantle, I think the first thing was to protect the foundation. And the foundation is the universe. I really do look at the universe as the most important character. I also believe that transmedia is a critical, plays a critical role in world building. Specifically if you have an FPS, because you can only tell so much story in an FPS. And then I would say for my personal story, which plays into this, 4 weeks before we shipped the first Halo CE, there was an author in Microsoft Studios, Eric Nyland, that wrote The Fall of Reach, which is the backstory, the origin story of Master Chief. And I read the book before I played the game. And the game is amazing without the book. But with the book, the world is bigger. You know, I care about Master Chief and know him as John as well, and it makes the world bigger. So one of the things that we did with 343, and talking with Bungie and some of the learnings they had too, at the time, the game studios only just owned the game. And I felt it was really important in taking over the mantle to own everything in the franchise, you know, from the books, TV, linear animation, pajamas, whatever, because I think that it's really important to have a universe that is fully connected. And I think this is an incredibly important decision for us, and it changed the way that creatives in our studio work because we work across multiple mediums. And it's also changed the way other studios like Minecraft and Gears go about their franchises as well. So reinforcing the foundation, one of the things, the most important things is keeping a consistent story and experience. You know, if you change the rules or the mythology, even with best intent, users object because they've invested their time in this universe. So as we took over, while we got the code and all the assets, we didn't have the lore of why decisions were made. And Bungie was an amazing partner here in, you know, I asked if we could go over and interview a bunch of them, if we could some way encapsulate their 10 plus years of learning so we could take that forward and hopefully start and make our own mistakes, but hopefully learn from any mistakes or learnings that they had made. And that was a pretty amazing thing for us. In doing so, in that time, Frank O'Connor, who was at Bungie, then came over to 343, purely with the purpose of, he knew we wanted to expand the world beyond the 3 months that the games had currently been in. And so coming in to bound that universe and figure out how big that sandbox is going to be that we could play in going forward. And we did a lot of this with transmedia. I mean, the first thing he did, that Frank's team did, was really sort of patch all the holes. There were a bunch of different fiction holes between games and books. But then also with Halo, we had a tendency to kill all of our characters at the end of the game. which just makes it harder to tell other additional stories. So we spent a bunch of time just really seeding fiction in the universe, seeding more characters. This doesn't mean we're gonna use them, but it gives us something to select when we want to tell new stories in different parts of the universe. The community, I think, in world building, the community plays an incredibly important role. I think with interactive entertainment, I think it's different than what other industries have in our relationship with our communities, especially because most of us also give tools to our communities to actually add on to the worlds that we as the creators build. And I think that creates sort of shared ownership, which I think is really a good thing. I think Minecraft does an amazing job they have very little story, but people have really taken and owned that world, and thus, a heck of a lot of people are playing Minecraft because they actually feel ownership in that world. I think with that relationship, there is a delicate, fine balance with when you listen to the community, and then when as creators you make decisions that maybe the community might not react to well, but I think it's a fine balance, and it's a good, healthy balance. With us, with Halo 4, I was very happy with the story, but the community gave us a lot of feedback that they weren't too happy with the multiplayer. And we took this feedback to heart, and working with Halo 5, we involved the community at several points coming into the studio to give us feedback for a couple of things. How to get esports back, as we didn't have something with Halo 4 that was worthy of that. But also looking as we were making changes with Warzone, getting their input. And I think it's a really successful partnership with the community and us going forward and having somewhat shared ownership. We wouldn't be there without the help and input from the community. I think the last thing is sort of evolving the franchise. I am incredibly proud of the work that my team has done over the last 9 years. And I want them to continue pushing forward and taking risks, even if that means sometimes we fail. I think it's always important to honor the core of what is for the universe and what is for the gameplay, but we also need to evolve that. And I love, as I said, the Halo 4 story. I think Halo 5 multiplayer into Sane is something that we did a really good job of. I think Rec Packs, Warzone, I personally like Spartan Ops, Halo Wars 2, Blitz Mode. These are all things I think that, I really think, I like what we've done moving it forward. We've also had a lot of learnings along the way. When we fell down with the multiplayer launch of MCC, or when we didn't put split screen in with Halo 5, I think it's incredibly painful for the community and for us. I think it erodes trust with the community, as the community is part of our world building. A lot of learnings from that, and I would say for any FPS going out forward, we will always have split screen in going forward, but painful learnings. I think that some of the things that, learning along the way, not every story is for every person, but in telling those stories, there does have to be some, look back, paying homage to the lore, and reasons for moving things forward. And while we love our transmedia, sometimes I do think we tell a little bit too much story in our games. When you have a gun and then you have aliens shooting at you, it is kind of hard to digest a lot of story. And so I think good learnings, hopefully we're showing in Halo Wars 2, a more simple story and really using transmedia as part of the way to get the deeper story, but keeping the game story more simple. I think for us also world building, when you're thinking about the evolution of world building, I don't think it ends anymore with any of us when you ship a game. I think with Halo 5 Sustain, we started trying to learn more about what does it take to kind of make a living world, that when you're thinking about evolving that world with the community and how that changes. And I think that's changing for all of us. I have a video I wanted to show, and I couldn't think of a reason in the story to show the video. So we are shipping Halo Wars. We shipped Halo Wars 2 this week, and I love our new hero, Atriox, and we kind of did something different in breaking the fourth wall. And so I'm just going to show this video just because I like it and it's funny. So could you show the video?
This baby's yours for 6K. Do we have a deal?
3.
6!
I will get this car for 3K.
And this is how.
I'll open with a strategic withdrawal.
Wait, hold on.
You counter with a disinformation campaign.
I'll talk to my manager and see what I can do. Just a little longer. I'm talking to no one. Great news! He said we can do 5999.
Then I'll bait you with psychological warfare.
Let me talk to him. He seems more flexible.
A pun? You know I hate puns! You catty little two-faced opposable
Which will prompt a
bastard.
verbal assault.
I will tear your head off and hang it from the rear view like a No!
With collateral damage.
Sorry. Came out wrong.
The evidence of which will not look good in my online review. And that's how I'll get this car for $3K.
Well played. How about a warrant?
Warrant's easy for suckers.
All sets of vital reason. Don't take back, no substitutions, no trades.
So, in closing, Halo is sacred. The universe is sacred. And I think it's really important after we release each one to take a step back and really think about what are the values of the universe, what do the users expect, and be really deliberate as we evolve and move things forward, because we want this to continue to be a universe worthy of devotion. So thank you.